Just as a disclaimer, we want you to know that some of the movies that we will be reviewing were shot in a different time and era where people of race and sex were not treated equally. We understand this and hope you do too. The movies or anything that happened on the sets are not the views of this podcast or what this show is intended to be all about.
Exactly. And we want to give due diligence in presenting the movie and not the views of the cast or directors or anyone involved. But we also feel it's necessary to let the audience know some of the background information to get a feel for what was happening at the time of shooting the film. Again, we hope you understand that we do not agree with everything that went on, and we just want to give out the information. And with that being said, hope you enjoy the show.
There is a podcast that lies between the imagination of two simple-minded earthlings. Travel with these two longtime friends, Jimbo and 80s E, as they attempt to explore the fifth dimension. Follow along with them as they take the key and unlock the door to the vast space between shadow and substance. This podcast is one of trivia, of insight, and of sounds and ideas from one of the greatest television shows ever produced. You are embarking on a timeless journey. There is your signpost up ahead. You are entering the tragedy of cinema's Twilight Zone.
You're looking at Act 1, Scene 1 of a nightmare. One not restricted to witching hours and dark rain-swept nights. Professor Walter Jameson, popular beyond words, who talks of the past as if it were the present, who conjures up the dead as if they were alive.
The Union soldiers burned Atlanta, but I assure you they took no pleasure in their work. They were forced to it by a man they hated more than they could ever hate the rebels. An ugly, sullen, unbelievably brutal man named William Tecumseh Sherman. To give you a more comprehensive idea of this great hero, let me read you a few extracts from the diary of Major Skelton. The date is Tuesday, September 11th, 1864. The city was ours. There was no need to destroy aught save that which could be of use in the fight against us. But Sherman was drunk with victory. He himself started the awful fires. The fires that destroyed that great citadel of grace and beauty.
In the view of this man, Professor Samuel Kittredge, Walter Jameson has access to knowledge that couldn't come out of a volume of history, but rather from a book on black magic, which is to say that this nightmare begins at noon.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Tragedy of Cinema's The Twilight Zone series. I'm your host, Jimbo, and I'm joined by my fellow Earthling, 80s E.
Here from the fifth dimension, back again to speak with you all. Glad to be here.
You doing all right, Eric?
Doing well. Yourself?
Bunch of snow days, man. It's just all this snow and cold weather, dude. Sometimes I wish I was in the fifth dimension. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no kidding. Especially when you got to drive as long as you do. We've had several wintry type days, and it's supposed to get pretty cold.
Yeah, pretty icy too. So, well, here we are.
Well, enough about the weather.
Yeah, enough about the weather. Now to our regularly scheduled program.
Right.
We are on episode 24 of season 1 already. 24, man. We're going right along with this. So this is Long Live Walter Jameson. This is a really cool episode, I do believe. Personally, I liked it. So, Eric, let's just jump right in and get going on it.
Okay. As Jimbo mentioned earlier, this is episode number 24 of season 1, and it is entitled Long Live Walter Jameson. It was directed by Anton Leader, and it was written by Charles Beaumont. And it was first broadcast on March the 18th, 1960, with a total production cost of $42,726.66. And a special edition for this week, I adjusted that for inflation, and it is 300. If this number is correct, I hope it's correct. Adjusted for inflation, it would be $373,585.46 for one episode. So that kind of brings it up puts it in context of today's numbers.
Yep.
So I don't know, Jimbo. What's a modern day episode?
That I do not know. I know that for Seinfeld, I know the actors were getting paid $1 million an episode. So that's at least $4 million there plus their set fees. I don't know anything else. You know what I mean?
So that's what's making me question. I don't know. That number may not be right, but I'll check a couple other websites.
No, but I'm saying that's probably about right. I mean,
yeah, it might be. That just seemed kind of low. That's why I was kind of wondering kind of what costs are today. But yeah. So, Jimbo, do you want to take the cast from here?
Sure. The cast, we have the main character, Mr. Kevin McCarthy. He played Walter Jameson, also Tom Bowen, and also Major Hugh Skelton. Now, why would you ask, why did he play 3 parts? Well, we'll get to that here shortly. He was also in Inner Space, where he played Victor. And he was also in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, another great sci-fi movie from yesteryear. Edgar Stelly as Professor Samuel Kittredge. Estelle Winwood as Laurette Bowen. She was in The Producer, one of Mel Brooks' films. Also, we have Dottie Heath as Susanna Kittredge. And one of the most famous movies she was in was The Diary of Anne Frank, where she played Mip Geese. So There you have it.
I wasn't Susanna Kittredge or Dottie Heath. I didn't know that she was in really any other TV or movie.
Now, Eric, if I said give me a synopsis of this movie, what would you say, or this TV show, what would you say of this episode?
Of this episode, a man seeks after eternal life only to find that, that it's not what it's cracked up to be.
Right.
He literally cracks up in the process.
Well, nice. I see what you did there. I said that a father forbids a history professor from marrying his daughter, who he discovers is an immortal who has lived for thousands of years.
Yeah, and I'm going to get to that part. That was kind of a big obstacle for me to get, let's get ahead of myself. Once again, let's start at the beginning, and we'll kind of maybe not slowly, maybe we'll speed up the walkthrough a little bit more and kind of hit the high points. The episode that 2 episodes ago, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, had a very large cast. This one only 4 actors in this particular episode, so we have a condensed cast. And really, just by way of kind of highlighting the episode, most of the screen time is between the Sam Kittredge character and Walter Jameson. A large chunk of the episode is there conversing back and forth. But I digress. Let's jump right into the episode. And right off top, we got a little bit of trivia. This stock footage is from Collins College, I believe, Collins University. And it was purchased at a bargain, according to a letter penned by Buck Houghton. I looked up Collins College or Collins University. I don't think it exists anymore. Maybe it does. I don't know. I didn't really do a very deep dive. But I can't find out where it's at in the U.S. or anything like that, so I don't know if it exists anymore or not. But that was just a side note of trivia. So as we go from the stock footage, the camera sort of pans into a classroom, and we meet Walter Jameson, who is a history professor and has been for, I think, 12 years at this point. And we see Professor Sam Kittredge. We come to meet him later. He is a fellow colleague, and he's sitting in on one of the lectures that Walter Jameson is giving. And actually, during the lecture, this comes to my first little, I guess, piece of trivia. Maybe Jimbo, you might have caught this. But during his lecture, Walter Jameson, well, first of all, the one thing that was intriguing to Sam Kittredge, who actually ends up being the father of the woman that Walter Jameson is engaged to. Walter Jameson seems to give his lectures, and the reason why he's so popular with the students is the fact that he gives his lectures as though he lived the events that he is telling about in his history class.
And if I remember correctly, I don't think he uses any notes either, does he?
Well, it's funny you should bring that up, because one of the things that he pulls out of his bag is a diary. The diary, actually, that's why you mentioned Major Hugh Skelton as one of the characters that he plays. He is quoting from a diary from Major Hugh Skelton. Well, he says that he is, but in fact, the camera actually gives a close-up shot on the diary that he's supposedly reading from, and it's dated September 11th, 1864. But the actual, script in the diary, the actual entry from the diary, he's not reading at all, if you've noticed that. Mm-hmm. He's totally ad-libbing the diary. He's just pretending to open it up, because if the camera shot allows you to read the words if you really pause on it, and the words are nothing. They don't match up to what he's actually saying as he's giving his lecture, if that makes any sense. So, that just further cements the fact that, this guy, Walter Jameson, I'm getting ahead here, but something doesn't match up if you were really paying attention closely, because it goes back to that fact that it just seems like he's telling these stories as if he lived through these events, and that's what is puzzling to Sam Kitteridge. And after the lecture, he goes and he invites Walter Jameson over for dinner at his house. Oh, by the way, before we get to that next scene, we have Rod Serling. He sort of splits his narration in this particular episode. He starts out with the narration describing who Walter Jameson is, and then he kind of fades out, and then Walter Jameson is giving his lecture, and then Walter Jameson's audio sort of fades out, and then Rod Serling picks up with the conclusion of his intro narration. Jimbo, any thoughts or comments on that first part of the episode?
Like you said, it's very interesting to listen to him talk. It's almost like captivating, and all of his students seem to be paying attention. You know what I mean? Like, they're mesmerized by him. I mean, I don't know how you were in school. Well, I do know a little bit how you were in school, but what I'm saying is you would have those teachers, man, where you could just fall asleep. You put your hand up on your desk like this and you'd fall asleep. But, it was those teachers that made things interesting for you and brought it down to a personal level that you were mesmerized with and captivated by. And I think that's exactly what this professor was doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think both of us were fortunate at least to have a handful of teachers that were, very similar on that level, that, they really cared about their students, and students can tell. And, they are engaging with their lectures and their teaching, and that's the kind of guy Walter Jameson is. Mm-hmm. He's very like you just described. You described it very well. Very engaging with the students, and it kind of is implied in the episode that his classes were full because this guy just had a wealth of knowledge, and he was a great storyteller. So we move on to the next scene, and I mentioned that Sam Kitteridge is going to ask Walter Jameson over for dinner, but before he does that, he wants to see, or he asks to see, the Major Hugh Skelton diary that Walter Jameson has just read from. And this is kind of where it gets a little bit tricky. It kind of piques your curiosity because Sam wants to borrow the diary so that he can examine it, and Walter Jameson kind of shuts him down and says, I never lend books out. And he kind of snatches it back out of his hand and puts it back in his bag. And I think that that's due to the fact that, this was just like a fake, maybe a fake prop. Mm-hmm. This whole diary thing. That's my guess. If I had to guess, it was just a fake prop. And he didn't want to loan it to him because he knew if, Sam was able to open it and read through it, he would find out that, those things, like I said earlier, the entries didn't match up to what Walter was saying, so then he would be outed that he was ad-libbing the whole thing and none of what was in the diary was the content that he was actually lecturing on. So that was kind of the highlight of that scene. They agree. Walter agrees to come over for dinner. The next scene, we see Walter exiting his house, and I think Jimbo has some trivia on the house that was used, but I don't know. Maybe we can save that for later, unless you want to enter it right here.
Oh, well, it was just that the interior living room and front door entrance set for the first act is the living room of George in The Time Machine in 1960. The original wood paneling from that film has been painted white, but is otherwise obviously the same set, albeit without the Victorian-era dressings. The same set also appears in other first season episodes of The Twilight Zone.
Okay, so that's actually the Kitteridge house, maybe not
Right.
Walter Jameson's house. We only see the front porch of Walter Jameson's house, and we see as he's walking, they actually were neighbors. Sam and Walter were neighbors because he kind of just walks across the street. We see a lady who's hiding behind a tree, and we come to find out later that is Laurette Bowen, but she's just kind of crouching behind the tree, and she's a mysterious figure, and she's watching Walter Jameson.
So when you
across the street.
saw her, what was your first reaction of who she was? Without giving anything away yet, what was your first reaction?
I don't know. I guess maybe I'm trying to think back to the first time I saw it because I've seen it probably 4 or 5 times now. But maybe like a long lost relative or his, maybe like his mother or
That's who I thought. I thought it was his mother. You know what I mean? That's who I thought.
Yeah, someone that he was estranged relative or something like that. I guess if I had to guess. And then Walter gets to the house and he is greeted by Dottie Heath, who plays Susanna Kittredge, and this is his soon-to-be wife. Are they engaged at this point? I don't remember. I think they are engaged at this point.
Are they, or is he? Is that why he's over there to ask to marry her? I can't remember.
Well, he does that later in the episode, but I think it was sort of like
just informing him.
Well, it was expedited. I think they might have already been married, or already engaged. And because of the tough conversation that Walter and Sam have, it's kind of sped up his, ambitions to marry.
Right.
But Sam is, he is concerned secondarily, I guess, about the age difference because I think Susanna is like in her 30s maybe. And Walter, well, we'll get to that in a second, but, Sam and Walter go, like I said, they are the bulk of the episode. So Susanna really makes kind of a brief appearance, and then Sam, her father, this is after dinner, and Sam, her father, tells her that she needs to go up and study because he's all about education, and she's trying to get her doctorate degree.
Right.
Doctoral degree, and I'm not sure in what. But Sam is, he's high on education. He wants her to go and study. She has a big exam coming up. And so Susanna goes upstairs and it's just Walter and Sam. And Walter begins to ask some probing questions. And Kitteridge recognizes Jameson as a guy by the name of Matthew Brady. And he discovers him in a Civil War photograph that he has a book, on his bookshelf.
Yep.
He's been talking to another one of his professor colleagues and, inquiring about certain things. And the other professor, I think, recommends, kind of jogs something in Sam's mind. So he comes home and he looks up this book and he finds a photograph of, Walter Jameson, a.k.a. Major Hugh Skelton, and he opens up the book, and they are, an identical match. The picture that was over 100 years ago matches Walter Jameson perfectly. I mean, he asks him the question, "Did your grandfather serve in the Civil War?" And Walter Jameson says no, and he asks him a series of probing questions, and he presents several pieces of evidence, and Jameson ultimately reveals his real-life history. And he describes that he is ageless, but he doesn't have an immunity to injury, and that he was this strange phenomenon, this sort of everlasting life was imparted to him by an alchemist for more than 2,000 years ago.
Now I have a question.
Sure.
Has it got to the point yet where they're playing chess and he notices the ring on his hand?
Yeah, that was one of the pieces of evidence that sort of led Sam to ask more probing questions. Yeah,
right. Because there's a ring on his thing. He's like, "That's a pretty interesting ring there." You know what I mean?
Yeah, he said something to the effect of like, "You should have taken off the ring because it's a dead giveaway."
Right.
And that was one of the, he describes his facial features in the photograph was like one of the last pieces of evidence, if not the last piece of evidence that kind of sealed the deal. Like, this guy looks exactly like you. He has the same facial features with the same mole on the left side of his face, the same ring. And, it's without a doubt Major Hugh Skelton from the Civil War. And this is where this particular part, as Walter Jameson is explaining, that actually he's not more than 100 years old, and he hasn't had this particular phenomenon for not only 100 years at that time, from 1860 to 1960, but actually it's more than 2,000 years that he's been living like this and not being able to see death, because there's a statue of Plato in the living room, and he makes an offhanded comment like he was actually able to talk to Plato face to face. I can't remember what the exact line is.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of go, they could have left that part out, because, that was just too implausible for me. Like, the whole idea... See, I guess we need to make a distinction here, because can he not die from diseases or plagues? I guess that is sort of implied that he can't, and that he can only die... That he can't die from natural causes, but only some sort of outside force, like, a mortal wound or breaking a leg, because I don't know. He makes the comment like, some people can live their whole life and not have an accident or not break a bone, and I don't know. That just that's too flimsy of an explanation for 2,000. Think about that, over 2,000 years of life, and think about all the wars that have been on the earth, and you didn't have an accident. Just go back to like 100 AD, and if you break your leg, a simple breaking of the leg, you could have infection. All these things can set in from just breaking a bone. And you mean to tell me that you lived 2,000 plus years of history and you never got caught in a war? And
we already know he was in a war because of the photograph from the Civil War.
Exactly. So, he kind of dismisses it as like some people are just lucky that way. But I don't know what the numbers are. But let's say you take out diseases like the bubonic plague and the 1917 flu and all the diseases and things that can go all the way back for 2,000 years. And let's say you can't die from those, okay? You can't die from natural causes. Just the number of wars that have been on planet Earth for 2,000 years, it just seems highly unlikely that you wouldn't accidentally die or on purpose die from either a mortal wound in battle or, just anything that could happen. There's a million ways to die.
Well, let me ask you this question: Do you think he could have died at all, or was he just saying mortal injuries, or was he just given that information, feeding it to Kitteridge, saying because he thought maybe, hey, Kitteridge is going to turn me in or kill me or shoot me or something. Maybe he thinks if he shoots me or something, then because I'm going to marry his daughter, then I still won't die. You know what I mean? Was he just feeding him a line, or do you think he was being honest?
I don't think so, because he goes on in the dialogue with Kitteridge and he says, I have a gun and it's in the top drawer of my desk, and every night I pray that I have the courage to pull the trigger. So he's sort of revealing the fact that, if I have a gunshot would kill me, but I've just been like lucky all of these 2,000 years and I haven't had an accident or, just think about like, there's just, I don't know. That was just too much for me to overcome. They probably could have cut that little part out and it would have been more believable to me. I know it's the fifth dimension and I'm probably being way too picky.
I think he should have just been immortal. Period. You know what I mean? I think that would have been easier to digest.
More sense, yeah. And he also talks about the fact that, Sam asked him, so I guess you've been married, something to the effect, I guess you've been married several times. And he said yes. And that kind of makes, that was good writing in the sense that, Walter can only be married, he has to leave his wives, because he's really a polygamist, because he just walks away from marriages. Because you just think about, if he gets married at, say, like age 40, and say his wife is around the same age, and he's around for like 10, 15 years, and she ages and he doesn't, his secret's going to be found out. So that's why he has to leave, and he can't really stay in marriages very long. So he's been married multiple times, and we're going to get to the point in the episode where we realize that the lady by the tree, I'll just go ahead and give it away now, is one of his former wives that has come back and found him. And he indicates that his first wife and child, he sees them pass away, because obviously he has like this quote-unquote eternal life. And so, he can't stay in a relationship very long. And this is concerning to Sam, because he's trying to protect his daughter in this. Right. And he knows that she's going to be hurt by all this.
No, I was just agreeing with you. It's just
I just thought maybe
you always wondered. I always wondered, like, actually, how many kids did this guy have? If he's been around for 1,000 years or 2,000 years, or whatever, how many kids did he have? You know what I mean? That's kind of shocking and scary in its own thought.
Yeah, it doesn't really talk about the children that he's fathered other than his original marriage. Also, it's important to point out too, he describes that the alchemist, pays him a large sum of money. That's how he becomes immortal. He pays him a large sum of money in order to do his testing and to run all of his experiments. And then he falls into like a deep sleep. I guess he becomes unconscious. And then when he wakes up, the alchemist is nowhere to be found. So I would take from that the implication that the alchemist, he's outlived the alchemist, that it worked, his experiment worked, and the alchemist is dead, and that's why he's nowhere around. But Walter Jameson says, I feel no different than when I started the experiment, and everything must have worked out. Because it's important to note, too, again, this is the meat of the episode, this back and forth between Walter and Sam. Sam is scared to die. He wants Walter to reveal this secret that he has discovered about Walter, and he wants him to share the information. And Walter's like, look, I don't have the answer. I don't know how this happened. And then he goes into the whole explanation about the alchemist and the experiments and stuff. Because, Sam is afraid to die, and he's like 70 years old at this point. And Walter says, you don't want to, even if you could do this, you don't want to live the rest of your days as a 70-year-old man, because it's like, it's implied that he's frozen in whatever age that he is. I think Walter's like 51 or 53.
Right.
And he's constantly in that state. And another point that's brought up is Walter says, you would think with all of the years that I have lived that you would become more wise. And he just says, that's not true. You just live day after day after day. They're all the same. And he actually is wishing that he could die.
Right.
But he doesn't have the courage to, commit suicide. So that's a pretty lengthy section.
And that's another problem I have. If he was really that distraught, he could have walked in front of a cannonball or something in Civil War. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. Like, to live that long, he's, that just doesn't. And if it was as horrible of an existence that he claims that it was, and you're not getting any wisdom, and there's no reason for living. Not that I would advocate for suicide or anything like that, but like you would think that at some point, in probably the multiple wars that he was a participant of, not just the Civil War, that he would find the courage to.
That kind of makes me wonder if the alchemist didn't put something special in the ring too that makes him very lucky. You know what I mean? Like where no ill will befall him. You know, maybe that's part of the alchemist sorcery. You know what I mean? Where this guy's just gonna have incredible luck. I mean, that could be part of it too. You know what I mean?
That could be that's a really good explanation, maybe too. So Susanna comes back downstairs after this long conversation. Walter explains to Sam that he tried to keep himself from Susanna because he didn't want to hurt her, because they would start a relationship, and obviously Walter, knowing himself that eventually Susanna would get hurt, Susanna fell for him, and then it was just too much for him. He fell in love with her, and so when she comes down, he says, let's get married tonight. Go upstairs, pack everything, and be ready in 15 minutes. I'm going to come back, and we're going to sort of elope. And so Walter, after that, he leaves and goes across the street to his house and goes into his study, pulls out the gun, and it looks like he's going to write a suicide letter. And in walks his former wife, we come to find out, whose name is Laurette Bowen. And he is not Walter Jameson, but Tom Bowen in a former life. She confronts him and tells him, you called me the most beautiful woman you've ever seen. You said I had the most beautiful eyes that you've ever seen at one time. And she's just, you could tell she's really heartbroken. And she explains that she had read about his engagement in the newspaper. So I guess Susanna and him were engaged at that point because she read about it, obviously. And she's tracked him down. And she's confronting him. And she basically says, look, no other woman is going to have you but me. And I can't believe you walked away from me. You've, obviously hurt me so badly. And she picks up the loaded gun and shoots Walter. Well, actually, we don't see her shoot him. We hear the sound come from outside of the house because the camera goes outside to the street. Sam hears the gunshot from across the street and comes running across the street. And he finds Walter languishing in pain. Well, actually, let me back up. He encounters Laurette standing out in front of the house, and he runs up to her and says, what's going on, or something like that. And she doesn't really answer him, I don't think. And then he rushes into the house. He finds Walter kind of slumped over a little bit. He's in great pain. He tries to help Walter. Walter says, no, leave me alone. And he can tell Sam wants to immediately pick up the phone and call the doctor. And Walter says, no. And this is the best part of the episode. I mean, the special effects for how they did it was awesome right here. Jimbo, did you have notes on?
Let me pull that up real quick. Let me find it real quick. So, in this cool little book I have, the Twilight Zone Companion, I just wanted to read a little bit about this. So, the 20th episode, which actually this was the 20th episode shot, which is crazy. According to this book, so even though it's number 24 in the season 1, I think it was the 20th episode shot. Okay. This was the 19th under Houghton, was the most technically demanding yet attempted. To accomplish the climatic effect of Jameson aging and turning to dust, a close collaboration was required between Kevin McCarthy, director of photography George Clemens, and William Tuttle, head of the MGM makeup department. Fortunately, a more talented man than Tuttle could not have been present. 5 years later, he became the first makeup artist to receive an Academy Award for his superb work on Tony Randall in The Seven Faces of Dr. Lau, which coincidentally was scripted by Beaumont. His credits range all the way from The Wizard of Oz to Young Frankenstein, The Fury, and Love at First Bite. McCarthy's metamorphosis consisted of 3 separate and distinct age makeups, each older than the one before it. For the first change, a trick was employed which Clemens had first encountered while working on the Frederick March Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in 1931. This consisted of drawing lines on the actor's face, in this case age lines, in red makeup. The set was then lit with key lights with red filters over them so that the set was bathed in a red light, rendering the lines invisible. As the scene progressed, the red lights were dimmed while simultaneously lights with green filters were raised. Now in green light, the lines suddenly became visible. Since the film is in black and white, the color change is undetectable. What appears to happen an apparent miracle in which a complete makeup change has occurred on camera with no cuts. Considerably heavier makeup was required for the second and third changes. Prior to the shooting, a life mask was made of McCarthy. Onto that, folds and wrinkles were molded into or in plasticine, an oil-based clay that never dries out. For each various component of the makeup, forehead, cheeks, chin, neck, and upper lip, a separate mold was made. Foam rubber pieces were cast from the molds and glued onto McCarthy's face. What emerges is a sequence in which the illusion of someone rapidly aging is rendered quite convincingly, while leaving McCarthy still recognizable throughout, something that wouldn't have been possible had they just substituted real old men for McCarthy. Like Perchance to Dream, Long Live Walter Jameson is basically a dialogue between two men, and their former between the main characters and a psychiatrist, and the latter between two professors. But whereas the former sustains itself with a tremendous velocity, the strength of the latter lies in the allure of its concept of the virtuosity of Beaumont's writing. So I thought that was pretty interesting that they had a little correlation between that and Perchance to Dream as well.
That was very interesting on how they did it. I thought it was awesome, for the time period that we were talking about, and then just the camera shifting back from Sam to Walter, and each time he gets older and older. I thought it was
it kind of reminded me of like the old Universal Monsters. If you listen to our Universal Monsters episode on the regular podcast, that the Wolfman scene when the Wolfman changes, that and when Claude Rains and the Invisible Man when he disintegrates at the end or whatever. Those two kind of pop out in my mind too.
Yeah, just a little piece of trivia here too. I guess the makeup artist was having a conversation with Kevin McCarthy as he was getting made up. And he said the cost to do this particular makeup was like $5,000 for Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. By the time they were doing it for that episode of the Twilight Zone, they were charging $25,000.
Right.
So it's quite a. I mean, $25,000. That's like over half of the total budget, right, of the entire episode.
Right. And that was only 19. Dr. Jekyll was 1931, and this was 1960. So that's only 29 years. Yeah,
so quite an inflation for that particular,
effect,
process and effect. But I thought it was beautifully executed. I thought it was awesome, and that was great. Now, back to the actual episode. Sam comes in. This all happens kind of in front of him. He hears Susanna come. She runs across the street. He can kind of hear her outside the door of the study. He rushes to the door to try to prevent her from getting in. And then we see the scene, the next scene, as good as the special effects was on the facial part of Walter Jameson, the whole piles of dust by his hands and the empty suit, kind of a little cheesy, but they spent all the money on the face, so
it was pretty. I still think it was pretty well done, though.
Yeah, I think it was okay.
Because it doesn't even some of it blow away in the wind or something.
Yeah, that was kind of cool at the end. As we come to the end of the episode, the sand or the dust kind of blows away, and I thought that was a cool line by Sam at the end. From dust to dust. I can't remember what the exact line was, but I just thought of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. That was
you have
cool
chosen
effect.
Poorly.
Yeah, the chalice, the Carpenter's Cup, and the Nazi drinks, and it wasn't. I just thought of that, how he sort of disintegrates. It's sort of the same, I guess, idea behind what happened. So, that's what popped in my mind. But
so let me ask you a question: when his body is disintegrated, since you have it pulled up. At the end, is the ring still laying there?
It is. It's on his left sleeve. There's a pile of dust, and
okay.
Yeah.
So my question is: do you think that Sam would go over there and pick that up and put it on to see if the power would still be working?
He doesn't in the episode, but I could see why you would think that. I see where.
No, I'm just speculating.
No, that's a good observation.
If the alchemy usually has to have a object to perform the alchemy,
and metal, and they kind of do in metals and stuff like that. Yeah.
So I'm thinking that the power would still be in that ring. Now when I first watched the show, I thought that maybe she pulled the ring off of him. I thought that would have been a cooler ending if she would have pulled the ring off of him, like she went in for a hug or something, and ended up pulling the ring off of his finger, and then he disintegrated. You know what I mean? Like basically, if you're not going to live, if I can't have you, nobody's going to have you. You know what I mean? I think that would have been really cool ending to this episode.
Yeah.
But then also if maybe Sam would have went over there and just, after he shunned his daughter away, went over there and just picked up and just kind of looked at the ring. You know what I mean? And then kind of get that odd look on his face, maybe slide it on. I don't know. I think that would have been a better ending besides the shock factor that you got. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was a cool ending, like the Romeo and Juliet type ending where...
Right, but this way it would have been left wide open. You know what I mean? It wouldn't have just been, it ended with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I like that. You should have...
I should have wrote it.
You were born in the wrong time. You could have been a co-writer of the episode.
Right. Yeah. So, a couple little things that I found. Ironically, the character portrayed by Kevin McCarthy in this episode mentions the date of September 11th. McCarthy actually died on September 11th, 2010. So, we've seen that a lot lately, like where people are the age in the Twilight Zone, they actually die that age in real life or whatever. This episode deals with immortality. The entire cast all lived exceptionally long lives. Kevin McCarthy lived to be 96. Estelle Winwood was 101 when she passed away, which I thought she was 101 in this episode. Edgar Stilley passed away shortly after turning 89, and Dottie Heath turned 90 in August of 2018. So long lived them. They're all long-lived lives. Let's see here. This episode has may have inspired fellow Twilight Zone writer Jerome Bixby from the Twilight Zone. It's a Good Life in 1961 to write his novel The Man from Earth. Also a story about a history professor who reveals to his friends that he is immortal through the tone and the age of the lead character, the mechanisms of immortality, and the plot. Of all the stories, all different considerably, Bixby also visited the immortal man theme in Star Trek the original series in the episode Requiem for Methuselah in 1969. This is among a handful of Twilight Zone episodes to exclude the series title and the closing narration. Other episodes to this is Jessie Bell in 1963, which had no closing narration at all, which is really interesting. On Thursday, We Leave for Home, 1963. The Four of Us Are Dying in 1960, which we've already covered. And He's Alive in 1963. Possible influence may be Mary Shelley's short story, The Mortal Immortal. It also deals with a man who receives the gift of immortality from a mysterious alchemist, but ultimately watches his loved ones die off. And Eric, did you have any extra things that you had?
No, just I don't think I had any other. I do have one other thing. The original title of the script and throughout the production was the title of this episode was supposed to be Forever and a Day. The title was not changed until months after filming was completed. Originally, this episode was to be filmed in 3 days, but it took an extra day to complete production, mainly because of the time involved to construct the proper aging process in Jameson's study. So a large portion of the filming time was obviously on that important scene.
Right. But also, Kevin McCarthy occasionally cited his performance in this episode, playing a character who was immortal, as seemingly having coming true in his own life, as he remained in good health and continued to act while outliving most of his family and colleagues as he approached the age of 100. McCarthy died, as we said, on September 11, 2010 at the age of 96, having earned an acting credit as late as the year he died, more than 50 years after this episode occurred.
Wow, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, very interesting. So Eric, give me your thoughts on this episode.
So, Jimbo, give me your thoughts. Well, I gather my thoughts.
It's a very, very entertaining episode. I like the premise of it. I just wish the ending was a little different. I think if they would have made more of a play on that ring, I think that would have drawn me in more. But I enjoyed it. I mean, this is probably upper tier of season 1. It's not like last week's
10?
Episode. You know what I mean?
Is it top 10?
We still got about 12 more to go through season 1. I'll let you know. I'm working on my list, but my list keeps changing as we keep going through these. As of right now, yeah, it probably right up there. You know what I mean?
Really?
I don't say it's in the top 5, but I mean, I'd say it probably right around 10, 11, at the moment.
Okay. It's not in my top 10. I guess the thing that I couldn't get around, and I know this is science fiction, but I just thought that was too fantastical, the whole living 2,000 years.
But you think that 3 astronauts that crash land on an asteroid and become you know what I mean, is better.
Yeah, I just think if I could rewrite the episode like you wanted to rewrite the ending, I would only go back 100 years to 1860. I wouldn't make it the whole 2,000 years because that's just... It's too much of a hurdle to jump over. If I could have rewritten it, I would have rewritten it that he was, 150 years old rather than 2,050 years old or however. I mean, Plato is like 325 BC, so I don't know.
Yeah, but I still think that makes it pretty cool, though, that he actually talked to some of these people. All you see is busts in libraries, you know what I mean? That I still think it's pretty cool.
Well, probably it would be cool if he sort of elaborated a little bit more,
right,
on those. But for time's sake, he couldn't do that. But I don't know. That's just my one criticism. But I thought it was it was a good episode. It was a good, solid, sturdy Twilight Zone episode that didn't make my top 10, but. It was good. I liked it.
It kept me entertained. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just from the fact of why is this guy showing up in this book? Why does he have this picture? Is this him? Is this not him? Who is this creepy old lady that's peering behind a tree looking at this guy? You know what I mean? So it piqued my interest. It kept my interest. So I definitely have to say I liked it a lot better than some of the other ones. So, well, I think this episode's coming to a close. Eric, any final thoughts?
None that I can think of. Where are we going next week? What episode? I don't have it in front of me.
Well, it's episode number 25.
Do you have that pulled up?
No. I want to say is it Execute? Maybe? I don't know.
Oh, it is a good one. It is. I think you're right. It is Execution. Now, no. It's People Are Alike All Over.
Oh, that's a good one too.
I won't jump into that one. I don't think I initially... You may have to pull me along on this one again because I don't think I initially liked it. If I'm thinking correctly. I think the ending is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get into it. But overall, yeah, I don't think I was a real big fan of it. But it's got an 8.2 on IMDb. So we'll put that one together next week.
All right. Well, so long from the fifth dimension, and that's a wrap on this episode. And 80s, take it away.
And cut.
Last stop on a long journey. As yet another human being returns to the vast nothingness that is the beginning, and into the dust that is always the end.